And
We're live. Welcome.
live on YouTube.
Cerebral Funness is on Spotify, YouTube Live. Here we are. How are you, Casey?
Avita, what's going on? How we doing? Happy New Year. Is this first one or second one of the new year? First one?
I'm actually not sure.
First one of the new year. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy
I
New
know we're
Year.
consistent. That's what's important.
Yes, yes. I feel like we lost count, but Happy New Year.
Yes, absolutely. Same to you. Well, I'm excited. So, for those that have not joined us before or are just finding us, myself and Casey, we actually started this podcast. We take a similar style to the way you would review, say, a movie or something of that nature, except instead of reviewing just movies, we're not opposed to it. But we choose different podcasts, things that we can learn from on business, entrepreneurship, personal development, things of that nature. And we just like to have a discussion around it and then share with others so that they can learn as well.
Yes, we are I might be aging myself, but we are the Siskel and Ebert of
Oh,
podcast reviews.
I don't get the reference.
Okay. Siskel and
No.
Ebert, growing up in the 90s,
I mean,
um,
the 90s. Those concern.
movie reviewers, so they were the biggest movie reviewers. Okay, we got to start there. Okay, before we get
Oh,
into content,
swerve.
Siskel and Ebert. Siskel and Ebert were like, so before there was like IMDb, before there was like
Okay,
Yelp reviews, like
got
Siskel and Ebert was the one who they gave you a 2 thumbs up or thumbs up, thumbs down. They reviewed all movies and
oh,
yeah.
okay. Well, we're
Yeah,
gonna
so
have to
they
look at
were
that.
they were they
See,
were
we're already
friends who
learning.
huh?
I'm
You
like,
said
we're
what?
already learning. This is good.
Yes, yes, and I'm for sure aging myself because they were hot in the late 80s, early 90s, sorry, late 80s through the 90s. So if you wanted a movie review, like they were
Mhm.
the ones who people went to.
That's also not saying much. I was very sheltered, so I wasn't watching a ton of movies or like any mainstream stuff. So it's probably just a me thing.
Wait, so what are we talking about today?
Okay. Well, it
Actually,
is
hold on.
no.
This is we didn't even talk about goals. We got to hit on goals too. Oh,
Yeah.
did you do your goals?
I have done my goals. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do a separate one. We'll really hit on that next week, guys.
I've
Apologies,
done
'cause
I've done goals and I did do the homework that you assigned on our last episode. Um
mhm,
yeah, that you did. Well, don't know where it was from, but I think it was like the feelings forecast and you had the
mhm,
different areas of
mhm.
there was health, spiritual, family, personal passions, friends, and then business.
Yep.
Um I
Wait, so
think
before we get into it, let's talk about that. How did it go? How did you feel like it went?
I did it pretty briefly, I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. Okay.
it
So,
was it
so
was a
AKA, I didn't put
feeling.
a lot of thought into this, Casey. I just did this. Okay.
No, not necessarily. Well, but for somebody that tends to overthink, I think it was
Yeah.
best where I could feel myself trying to take different angles. And I was like, I kind of think this is the point, is to be able to reflect on these different areas and either go, yeah, it's okay, or I improved some, but that could still get better. I feel like it just makes you take inventory a little bit. And for
Yeah.
that purpose, I definitely think it was helpful.
Yeah. For me, without getting into details, like
Sure.
the family and friendships was definitely lower than I would have liked it to be.
Mm,
This was something that I was actually pretty aware of. So I'm actually kind of proud of myself for kind of being aware of it. But
yeah.
being able to spend more time with friends last year was something I felt like was an opportunity. Same thing with family.
Hmm.
So that's definitely something I'm being very intentional about, making sure I take part in of this year.
I like that. Yeah. I'm like, I think.
It's one thing virtually to, talk to people, but it's another thing to be able to physically see and hang
Yeah.
out with people. We need that. We thrive off that. So
Yes. I was gonna say, I'm like, mine are pretty high in like the family range.
yeah,
Friends, I kind of put mid tier because I feel like that's where I'm like, I think you can grade yourself in different ways on this, where I'm like,
mhm,
I have made a lot of friendships. I've made a lot of, for sure, acquaintances. But I was kind of like, I don't know that I did a ton of like, I'm hanging out with friends. It was more
yeah,
of business networking or other things. So I'm like, I think family was rated a little higher. Friends this year, I'd like to develop of like, now I feel like I'm getting honestly, when things change, like everything changes. So like my
Yeah.
circle's changed a lot, and I've never been one to have like necessarily a ton of friends. And so I think this year is where I'm going to be able to really develop that, like, okay, I've got a core group. Let's invest in this. Like let's
Yeah.
make sure we make time for those people.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. What I was gonna say was, when you talk about not having a lot of friends, I was going to put this up there,
So
and I was
tell
gonna
us.
sing the song, but you
Yeah.
got a friend in me.
Yes.
My son's favorite song, literally.
I
Dada,
love.
could you play Woody? Play Woody. Anywho, all right, sidetrack. We've been sidetracked
Yeah.
too much. Let's talk about what we're talking about today. I'm excited. I'm pumped. We
Yeah.
are talking. We are doing a review on one Alex Hormozi, who
Yeah.
is one of the best gurus. Uh, Podcasters or just talents in the business
Yeah.
and entrepreneur space, and just gives away a ton of free content. So we probably could do 365 every podcast every week. We probably could do enough content between him and his wife Layla. Like
Oh,
that could literally be our entire business plan. Like seriously.
absolutely. I'm like, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking today about growing, how to grow your business. And I feel like this is very instrumental, especially being that it's the beginning of the year. A lot of people are coming into the year with goals to either grow, purchase, build a business, and he gives some really good steps and some tactical things to do as far as how to grow it, how to scale it, and just how to just become overall heavily business minded. So, what were your thoughts on this one?
I loved it. I'm like, I am on the bandwagon with them. I
Yeah, they're
love
solid.
it's one of those people that, like, once you find out who they are, it's like you can't unsee it. Now they're
Yeah.
everywhere and you're not even mad at it. You're just like, ooh, that's a good tip. Ooh, I need to rewatch that. Oh my God, we should be implementing this stuff. It's very contagious in a good way.
Oh, that's a very good word because I feel like anytime they drop something, that's how I feel. It's like I gotta listen to it
Yes.
because there's just juice in everything that they pour, right? And everything. And I try to squeeze it all out. So
Absolutely. What were your thoughts?
no, this was good. I mean, for those that have been tracking or eventually may track down the road, I spent a lot of 2024 looking to purchase and buy businesses, and was able to acquire my first at the literally the last week of 2024, and then moving into 2025. On the cusp of acquiring my second one. So I feel like I'm finally kind of coming into the light a little bit and starting to see some of the light at the towards the end of the tunnel. I feel like it's
Just
like
creeping
mud crawling. Yeah, I feel like I'm like, is that so?
in.
So pretty excited about that. But it's one thing now it was one thing to listen to all the material as I was aspiring to get there, but
Mhm.
now I'm like listening to the material now that I need to apply it, right?
Yeah,
So it's a different type of listen, and yeah, I was able to soak all this up.
that's amazing. I love it. Different perspectives. I feel like
Absolutely.
I don't remember what call I was on, but I was on something, I believe, yesterday, a meeting, and people were talking about that, of like when they say, like, you could listen to something different, you're at a different point in your
Hmm.
life, or I forget, there was a phrase the girl mentioned, but it was almost like a man will never cross the river the same way twice, or something like that. But it was in
Yeah.
essence, like, and I think that's where we're at, where it's cool that you can listen to these things, over again, whether it's immediate or even down the line. And to your point, like maybe you're just starting the business and you kind of take one gathering from it. And then you listen to, now you've got the business. Ooh, now you're picking out different things that you get to apply. And I think that's really cool that you can learn in different stages from ideas like this.
Yeah. So I'm pumped. So let's get into this. So he gave 12 steps per se. We're not going to go over step by step. If you want to do that, you can just listen to the full podcast in its entirety.
Yeah.
It's called, what is it called? It's called grow. I think it's called Grow Your Business in 2025. Sorry, how to grow your business so fast in 2025 it feels illegal. So great catchy tag, great kind of get you in there. But let's start with number one, right? So we're gonna kind of skip around. We may hit a couple in a row, but we're gonna just kind of bounce around here.
Mm-hmm.
The first one he talks about is like step number one: nobody knows you. And he talks about spending the first 4 hours of every single day working on your business. And
Yeah.
I thought this was a great first step because I feel like too often we think that we're either should be somewhere that we're not there yet, or we think that, we're unsure of exactly where we are. So to me, like as I'm kind of stepping into this space, I'm thinking, okay, how could I apply this? I might have, my W-2 work to do initially, but how can I make sure that every day, beginning of the day, that I'm applying something working towards my ultimate goal, which is my own businesses? So I
Yeah.
thought this was a really, really good tip. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think elaborating on that, like in the beginning, something you said is like no one knows who you are, or like they don't know your business, they don't know you, and so
Yeah.
I took that as, work on your business the first 4 hours, but I took it as like that's your time to strategize. How are
Yeah.
they going to know us? Are you using social media? No, you don't want to use that. Okay, well then what are you going to do? Is it, do you physically already have a sales team, or, like I felt like that was so key to brainstorming because it's like you need that funnel, you need the business to, coming in to funnel everything else. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of how I received it.
Yeah, and also before we get into it, just makes a good point. Pretty much he's saying like put your business first, right? Like
Yeah.
put that let that be front of mind, center of mind, like make sure you're prioritizing that. So let's watch a little clip here. Let's see here.
For our business, which is a business order of magnitude change. All right. And so fundamentally, if you think about a business, there are many things that you can optimize. So you can increase your close rate by 10%. You can increase your conversion rate on your opt-in page by 10%. You can increase your email follow-up. All of those things are optimizations. And so the problem is with optimizations, you can only go to 100%. They're capped. But with advertising, you can, in a very real way, 100x the amount of people who find out about your business. And one of the keys that small business owners get stuck in is they get in this little optimization mousetrap where they're like, I need to move this. Oh, I was at 10.1 to 1, and now I need to be at 10.2 to 1. It's like, dude, just get 100 times the leads and your business will grow. So here's what most people think when they think about their given marketplace. So let's say you're a local dry cleaner. All right. You see that you're advertising on Facebook. And so you see you have the whole pie. And so you're happy. So that's just you. Then you have you plus one other person. Then all of a sudden you've got half of the pie. Then it's you plus 3 other people in the marketplace. And now you feel sad. But the reality is the marketplace is significantly bigger than you ever give it credit for. There are so many humans on earth. This is what it looks like in reality. You're actually only advertising on one of 4 different methods. And the way that you're doing it is only on one slice of the medium. And then within that, you have your tiny little quarter that you're taking up. And so
Yeah, so we're gonna he can get a little bit tactical, so I won't take everyone down the tactical aspect, but I wanted to show this clip because it's a real statement in the sense of very frequently do we feel like there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it talks about like finding. You heard of the book? Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So but yeah, too often it's like, oh, I can't do that because so and so is doing that.
Yes.
Oh, I can't do it. They're already doing that, right? And when we taught growing up, like imitation is the best form of flattery, right? Like if someone else is doing it, it means it's working. Why not try doing it yourself? Like so think about like, Lyft. Like Uber was around, Uber was popping, Uber was big. Lyft was like, oh, let's do the same thing. Same exact concept.
Made it
And
grow.
oh, look, now we're popping too. Now we're making money too, right? So I feel like too often we feel like if we're not first, quote unquote, if we're not first
Yeah.
for last,
You know, first of all,
and but if not, but not even that, like if we're not first, then we can't play at all, right? And I feel like that's something that we have to shift as we talk about our business.
yeah, absolutely. I'm like, also, did anybody else notice that he said, then if there's 3 of you, but he drew 4? Come on.
I did. No, I definitely didn't know
Yeah,
that.
fourth of the pie. We're not even getting a third.
He was checking to see if you're paying
Right.
attention.
I was paying attention. Actually, before I was not, because most of the time I'm listening to it and I'm walking or at the gym or something. But yeah, I think it is easy. Like we've talked about this before, like starting a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast. Like why should, what's going to be different about us? Should we even do it? And I feel like the reality is like, why not? And to the
Mhm.
point of his initial thing of like, nobody knows you. So we're just going to keep posting anyways. Because the reality is like, even once we probably feel like a few people are watching it, it's still next to nothing. So if we're bringing value and we're enjoying the process, we might as well show up anyways, because we have a desire to do this. We're learning, we're growing through it. You know, you got to just kind of push past that and realize like, you got to give it a shot, or keep doing more, because it's probably not anywhere near what you think it is.
Agreed. So one of the next steps he talks about is that he uses the phrase "shrink your competition," and I looked at this a couple different ways. Like he references like killing them with kindness, or he references like the Eminem 8 Mile analogy, like which is still one of the best movies ever. But I think about like our mentorship, and our mentor, he talks about collaboration over competition, right? So I think all these in my mind kind of play together. I wanted to just play a quick clip, and then we could talk about this.
Sure.
You shrink them into irrelevance by comparison. And so there's two ways that you can become the tallest building, right? You can knock everyone else down, or you grow so that they become smaller in comparison to you. And so everyone sees their little building and thinks, oh no, I should knock all my competitors down, right? When in reality, all you need to do is build the biggest absolute building there. And the thing is that you're going to block out the sun, and your shadow will be so big that no one can even see these people. And let me tell you a story about this.
What an analogy, right? Like your shadow will be so good you won't even see the people. So like to me, it kind of goes back to like that, like worry about you, like you worry about you, like don't worry about the competition. Don't worry about, like, for example, to your point, YouTube. Why are you doing YouTube videos? No one, who's listening? How many listeners do you have? I don't care, because I know every time that I hop on here, I'm practicing speaking into a camera, because there's going to be a time in my life when I'm going to be speaking into a camera in front of a lot of people. And I don't want that to ever be the first time that I do that.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
There's going to be a time when we have to hit on a topic and about a specific thing in front of a good amount of people. And I want to make sure that I'm getting those reps in now. So when that time does come, I can remember these days, right? When it's just me, you, and 0 people listening right now, right? But I can, like that big 0 at the top, which is fine, right? But these are the tools and skill sets we have to grow in order to be successful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it also goes with the idea of like what they say, like when you've got haters, you've made it, and I think about this and like all the references, even 8 Mile, or like you said, he goes into some of his examples with this too, but it's like, if you're at that level, I think that is where you kind of have to cut the noise. And it's that same principle of like, I can't control what's out of my control. But what is, now I get to decide how am I going to react or behave or be proactive against this, and I think these are two great strategies to know that like at a certain point, this is going to happen. It's not a maybe. It might happen to some people. Like it's probably going to happen to all of us to some extent. There's going to be somebody that writes a mean comment, or they're going to come after your business or write a bad review or whatever. And so I think this is a great way to go. Pick your lane, but there's tasteful ways to handle this, that it doesn't have to ruin your business, and you don't have to absolutely lose it either when it's unnecessary. And I think for me, I definitely resonated with the kill 'em with kindness, because that's definitely probably my style. But it is definitely my style. I'm like, it's all right. You'll know that you made the wrong decision, and if not, I'm gonna keep on with my happy little days. So, but I liked it because it did offer another perspective, and it's, to me, the kill 'em with kindness comes naturally. But I liked that idea of growing large enough to, we say cast the shadow, but I feel like that could potentially have a negative connotation. But I liked it in the sense of, to your point, focus on you, focus on your lane. If you keep growing, no one's going to even be worried about this. If you have, if you have 100,000 followers or clients or whatever that may be for you, and one person is throwing a tissy fit over here, all of a sudden you stop caring. Now, if you only have one client and they're ticked off, okay, we might have to work on some things, but we got to keep growing. So I think that was a great way to break it down.
Yep. Let me play one more clip from this. Sorry if anyone can hear my kids screaming in the background. There we go.
Is that oftentimes hate, if you boil it down, comes down to, I do not prefer the way this person does things. I have a different preference. And it's like, great, right? Like, I make money one way. He makes money another way. and therefore he is wrong. It's like, no, you just do the way you want, which is awesome because you do it your way and they do it their way. And the people who are attracted to that will do that. And the people attracted to you will do yours, and great. Like, I mean, of course there's engagement baiting and things like that because, you know, people want to get views and all that. And I respect it. I get it. But big picture, I think you can't take it personally, because whenever I fall into that little trap, I think to myself, I'm a relatively developed monkey that is sitting on a little blue marble in a solar system that's in one of a billion galaxies, and I'm worried about some screen that has words on it of a made-up language that we had in the last 1,500 years of how we communicate face noise to each other. And when I think about that, I think, you know, this would be pretty silly for me to like ruin a day over. So
I thought that was so interesting. I was like, he just broke it down to where it's like, yeah, this is stupid. You know, like when,
I feel like it stood out to me the last part when he's like, in some made up language of these.
in some minute,
and I was like,
so all in all, this is dumb. He did, before we move on to the next part, he did say one thing that I thought was so cool. He said people needed to be reminded more than they need to be taught. And I love that because I think that's so true in so many different aspects.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, I was on a call today that kind of turned into a coaching call, and it was one of those that I was like, okay, talk to me about what you do, share about what they did. It's like, okay, so you're saying you don't have enough time to do blah, 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 blah. No, but you do, right? You're really just self-sabotaging yourself, and you got this. Well, I guess when you say it like that, and thank you, it makes sense. To me, it just makes sense. Like you like, right? So like, but they just had to be reminded of like who they were, you know, what kind of opportunities they had, and like why they were making excuses, you know. So I feel like I chose the wrong profession. I feel like counseling should have been like my thing. I could have made so much more money. But anyway, I digress.
Part of the equation.
I digress. But let's move over to step number 3.
Okay.
Be clear, not clever.
Yes.
So, well, we won't talk about this too much, but he talks about breaking things down to where a third grader can understand it, which is me.
Here.
Proof over promise. That concept, and I was like, love that. Right? Just again, there's just some of those nuggets that really were just driving home, like the proof over promise. Like sometimes I feel like I struggle with this because I feel like I need maybe way too much proof, or like I feel like I'll, you know, kind of take it to the extreme. But this is definitely something I'm kind of working on. It's like, all right, I have proof of concept. I'd much rather show you rather than tell you, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think that's true because like that's what I feel like most of us are seeking anyways. You know, use this example like when you go for reviews, you know, if you're on Amazon, you're searching for whatever, barbecue, you're not most likely going to go with the one that's got one review and started up yesterday. But then there's this other one that's the same price, same brand, everything, and they've got 5,000 reviews. Most of us are going to pick the 5,000, you know, if all other, you know, factors are the same. And I think it's good to view it that way, especially when so many of us are in different types of businesses, that it's not always a product. It could be a service or different things. And I think that's so key that like, what would you want as a consumer? You don't want to just be told like, buy it, it's the best, do it now. Like, but if you're like, dang, 6,000 other people loved this thing, I'm gonna check this out. You know, like that seems like a good deal.
Well, think about it. We naturally have for the most part, we always have like a scarcity mindset. We have a scared in the sense of, oh, is there enough for me? Am I too late? I don't want to miss out, right? Like, and think about. I definitely know I'm gonna get a little. I definitely know my culture. I'll say it like that. Like if we're out and about and I see somebody running and I see like 2 or 3 people running, I'm gonna start moving fast. Like I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to not be a part of that, right? So
like groupthink or something like that too, right? Like everybody does. It's like even when you see kids, right? Like one starts crying and the others were totally fine. And all of a sudden, all of them start crying. Like, it's the same idea. You're like, what's going on? That's why I use the sale example, too, where I'm like, I feel like you don't need stuff, but then all of a sudden you see the sale or the countdown. You know, they're famous at that online. I feel like of doing the countdowns of like, ooh, only for the next 59 minutes, 48 seconds, you better get it. Well, you know, we have a closeout you know, you're sitting there like,
knowing they have a whole pallet in the back, like
right,
that.
got this product yesterday. They might not even have it.
I wanted to get your thoughts on this. He talks about do epic stuff first, then talk about it. Most people want to know why they should listen to you. And I
Yeah,
thought about this even after earlier today when we were just talking about prepping for this episode,
yeah,
how we want to explain the why, right? So we want to explain why should people listen to us,
yeah,
right? Why should they choose to spend their time and focus on you? But they usually do it after you do epic shit, right? Like they want to know how could they do that? Why should, how could they be in that same situation?
yeah,
So I say all that to say that that's why like the amount of viewers and subscribers and likes and stuff on any type of social media doesn't mean anything to me because I feel like I'm working towards something big. And at some point that will naturally happen, right? At
mhm,
some point there will be those that want to know, and then that creates natural interest and so on and so on. So wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that because it's
yeah,
definitely something that you just mentioned earlier.
yeah. Well, I think it can evolve. You know, to your point, like I do think we're in the building phase, right? Like you said, like our goal is not to suddenly, you know, we're not going to have 10,000 subscribers this year. I don't know. We could. I mean, I don't want to have a negative mindset either, but I feel like that was not the purpose of why we started it. You know, like we're focusing to me, it's about the habit building. You know, we're focusing on the consistency. We're focusing on, you know, how can we construct this better? How can we present this better? When they talked about earlier being clear, to me, when I thought of how could we present this as a why, it was like, okay, how can we be clear on this so that we're not just chatting away and somebody's halfway through like, wait, what is this about? What are we
Hmm.
doing? Like, why do they have
Hmm.
I mean, it could be silly. The reason why could be like for entertainment purposes. Check this out. We just
Hmm.
want to do this for entertainment. You're sitting there scrolling. We thought this was interesting. Check it out. But I think it all kind of goes hand in hand of like, you know, it's all for the bigger picture of being intentional and working on our communication and practicing, like you said, being in front of a camera or talking to an audience. And I think you're right. This part that we're building right now is going to be the stuff that later on people are going to see us and think, oh God, they just, you know, did it like that. How did you do it? It's so easy. And we're going to be sitting there laughing. Like, we've been doing this for 10 years now. What are you
Yeah.
talking
This is episode 650. Like, what do you? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, it just happened overnight, you know, and they're gonna be like, oh, you know, we see these people, it's so easy to like, oh, but they've got a team for their social media, they got
Hmm.
this and that, and like, you know, I think that's a little bit too that lack mindset of like, if only I had this, I could do it. And I think, you know, this has been a great example, I think, to ourselves and hopefully to others too, but more for ourselves, I think, too, of just proving like, okay, we don't need all the fancy gadgets, you don't need a team, we're gonna just do the thing, take
Hmm.
action, hopefully do some epic stuff.
Yep. Do epic-ish. Um, so thus far we talked about shrinking your competition. Nobody
Mhm.
knows you exist. Be clear and clever. Then he talks about the hook. We won't get too much into the hook because the hook is definitely um, very salesy, but a couple things. Proof, promise, plan. That's what he lives by. So, you want to sort tips
Follow.
for your hook was proof. Yeah, promise, plan, tips you want to follow. Um, but I do want to talk briefly on, he talks about you could do more now than you think. I
Mhm.
thought that was really important. I can't remember all the analogies that he used, but I thought that was so true because there's moments every single week. We'll just keep it a week. Every single week where you feel like I can't go any further. I've done
Mhm.
all this. I've done all this. Right? It's almost like equivalent to like, man, I worked out. I ran 5 miles a day,
Yeah.
but someone else is running 6, right? And you have more in the tank. So why don't
Yeah.
you run 6? Like it's a healthy, to me, it's like that healthy struggle, that internal struggle. And this
Yeah.
was just like a good reminder, like, hey, anytime that you think you've done a lot, do more.
Mhm.
Anytime you feel like you maxed out, add more. And I think that's what keeps the grit and the perseverance going and going and being able to feel like you can truly accomplish more than what you ever set out to accomplish.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, because I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because I know at a certain point too, like maybe you're at your current limit. And I say
Hmm.
current limit because like we're all always evolving. You know, what feels like a ton today you know, in a different state or circumstances, you might be like, that's an easy day, we're good. But I also think, you know, as we're talking about being efficient in business and building it, I think some of the key points you made, and I know we're kind of skimming over like the hooks and things like that, but I also think it wasn't just about doing more, like more of everything. It is more, but it's like, how are you doing the more? I know he taught, like, one thing that stuck out to me is like with the hooks, he was like, if something worked, figure out why it worked and do more of that. So it's not necessarily saying like your output or exertion always needs more. If you
very intentional.
Yeah, like instead of, okay, I called 100 people, now I got to call 200, now I got to call 1,000. Well, there's only so much time in a day, you know, you max it out. I feel like this is about fine tuning that. Okay, if I don't have more time, what can I do? Well, man, nobody's answering calls between midnight and 3 in the morning. Well, then why are we making calls at midnight and 3 in the morning? But I mean, I feel like sometimes more doesn't necessarily mean it's so literally. It can be like, how are we going to fine tune what's working? Do we even know what's working? I know he talks about that too, of just like, you know, do you know which items are working? Are you buckling down on that? Or are you just trying new things to try new things, you know?
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to the notion of, you know, obviously working smarter versus harder, but also like just being very, gosh, I had the analogy. It was on the tip of my tongue.
No.
I can't remember. Okay, if I randomly just blurt something out, that's what it was.
We'll know what it's for.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, oh, pasta. Yeah, you know what I mean. If I just randomly like spit something out, but no, I really, to me, like, you know, there's still more of the video, but like everything he was saying, I felt like wasn't necessarily new, but again, it just is more so reminded versus taught.
Yes.
Right, and I feel like this is one of those things.
Absolutely.
Talks about word of mouth, so people remember negative experiences versus positive experience. So, you know, being very purposeful in that, and then stealing from yourself. So, like what you just mentioned, use what works and keep doing it. And I want to pause here for a second because I feel very too often, I feel like people, you know, especially in today's society where it's a short attention span for everything, and I feel like people get bored. I feel like, let me figure out this. Boredom creates like busyness, and I feel like people get bored in the simple things. But I feel like the simple things is what's going to take you to where you need to go. You know, I was trying to figure out a cool way to say that, but that's how I feel like. I feel like boredom leads to, you know, you gotta be busy because you gotta stay doing something, right? But if you just stay simple, if you stay consistent with the simple, like that's is what takes you towards your goals. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's super accurate. And I think it kind of goes back to our idea of like being intentional, you know, of like when you're working, be intentional with that. If you're relaxing, be fully present. Because otherwise it's like you're always busy, but nothing's getting done. And now you're stressed out because nothing's getting done. You know, I just had a colleague and friend, I saw her post the other day, and that was her focus, as she was talking about intentionally relaxing and going, it was her time off. And she was very present and very firm on those boundaries in a healthy way of like, no, this is my rest time, and it is unapologetically my rest time for whatever she needed in that moment to recoup. And I think, to your point, we can learn a lot from that. And when we talk about efficiency and stuff, like even the example before of like being busy and doing more doesn't necessarily always have to mean what we think, which is like, oh God, I work 40 hours a week. Now I got to work 60. Now I got to work 90. I mean, in some circumstances, it might, you know, I'm not saying it's never going to happen. Like he talks about his schedule, and for a lot of people, it probably seems crazy. You know, he's talking about 12-hour days like it's a light day, you know? Like,
yeah. And I think to each their own on that one.
Right. That's why I think you have to figure out, I think it's about keeping it simple and in a sense for like what's going to work for you now. Like when we talk about like do more now, it's like what can you do right now? Because I think it's so easy for us to compare to others or, you know, get lost and then you don't really do anything, where it's like, you know, I was thinking this the other day on my walk where I was like 5 minutes doing something would do me more good over time compounded than freaking out because I can't put an hour towards it right now or 2 hours or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, we need to do a whole episode at some point on um, compounding, the impact or the effect of compounding,
Yeah,
because I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily realize like that's where how wealth is built, right?
absolutely.
That's the difference between being rich and being wealthy is compound. That's
Hmm.
how obviously interest, like there's a lot that goes into compound. So what at some point we'll have to touch on that.
I like that.
I do want to bring up this point as we skipped over a couple things, but I do want to hit on say what you can say and show what you can show what you can show. So he
Hmm.
talks about your uniqueness, and I thought this was important because this is a challenge that I actually had for you the other night when we were on a phone call. Right, what makes you different? What makes you unique? And too often we get into the space of whether it's business or real estate, or whatnot, and we feel like we don't necessarily stand out. But what
Hmm.
we forget is like everything that we did that got us to this point, is why we do stand out, right?
Mm.
And I feel like sometimes we lose our identity when we're around others of, similar interest or
Yeah.
others that have, higher success. Like we feel like we're kind of unworthy or
Mm.
necessarily shouldn't be there. But no, there is a reason why we were here. And there's a
Mhm.
reason that makes us unique. So in this aspect, he talks about like dissecting until you can find exactly what makes your business product service different. I
Mhm.
feel like I love that point, and that was something I definitely wrote down because that's something I need to make sure I hammer home as I continue to build out something.
Yeah. I think it's good to I think this is a spot where you can collaborate with others too, because to your point, like us discussing it, I think sometimes it's easier to maybe hear out a third party, because I think also to that point when you're saying like you can get lost because you're around people of, whether it's a similar business or status or whatever that thing is. I do think sometimes you get into the monotony of doing certain things, or you're just you or whatever, to where it's easier to kind of gloss over things, or you're almost
Mm-hmm.
programmed. Like, honestly, like when you asked me that question, I realized like I didn't necessarily feel prepared, but I also think it turns into almost that like interview style, where you have these like set answers
Yep.
extent of, not that I'd ever prepared for that, but I feel like you're almost trying to grasp for like, when somebody asks, what do you want? Oh, well, I'm gonna, build wealth or what. It's like that generic where you're like,
Yeah.
I help
Yep.
people,
Those cookie cutter responses.
yeah. And so I think talking it out with somebody, and I know he gives an example of a business, and it was like as they're discussing it, and well, how do you make this? And well, what do you guys do for that? And the person's just chatting along, and it's like, hold on, reverse. What was that one?
That one little tidbit.
Because, I forget what he's talking about. It's like, oh, they roast it. Do the others
Mm-hmm.
do that? I don't think so. And
Yep.
so I think it is good to not only just do some personal reflection on this, but I think relying on others, because I know I will definitely be trying to navigate that as well. What are your
That's
thoughts on
what.
it yourself?
Um. Yeah. I think it's again. I feel like we lose our. We talked about labels and identities before, but I
Hmm.
feel like in this like this is kind of goes hand in hand with that. I feel like we lose our identity
Hmm.
in our art, and I feel like sometimes we forget. I feel like sometimes we forget that the journey is what makes us who we are,
Yeah.
and the outcome of the journey like does not dictate everything that went into the journey and everything that encompasses the journey per se. So I say that to say like I feel like too often, and myself included, I get so worked up in trying to achieve this title, this label,
Hmm.
or this status per se, and it takes away from what makes me unique and why I think that's why it's important to make sure that I follow
Yeah.
the steps that I am right now.
Like be your authentic self.
Hmm.
I love
Yeah, and
that.
it takes a while to kind of gain that confidence, right? Because you feel like,
Yeah.
well, can I do that? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have as much money as them. I don't have that same status. I don't have a following.
You're
But
right.
when I walk into a room now, like, I don't worry about that kind of stuff anymore. Whereas I used to, like, I don't know anybody here. I'm not the most popular one here. I don't like now. I just if you rocking with me or you're not rocking with me. So that's
Yes.
kind of, but it takes, that's still something I'm still actively working on, and it takes time to grow that. So
Takes
let's
some.
watch a quick little clip.
Yep.
Emphasize it so that people are like, oh, this is different than other things. And the really important part about this is that maybe some of the other cigarette companies also toast it, but they don't say that they toast it. And so the perception is still that it's different, even if it is the same. And so the best version of this is finding something that's truly unique. The second best version is to just say something that's unique about something that everyone else already does, but that your customers don't know. And so the corollary to that is say what only you can say. So you show what only you can show, and you say what only you can say. So the showing part is going to be like, okay, with the toasting thing, how do we display that visually? With the super secret black belt, then how do we display that? Now you could show the black belt, you could show you shaking your hands, getting the certification, you could show you winning some tournament, right? If you're toasting, you could show the bed of all the tobacco that's getting toasted and the smells and the wafting through the air, whatever, right? And then you describe it in a way that only you can say. And so to do this, you get narrower to be more unique. And so the thing is that you don't need to be the best in the world. You need to be the best in a puddle. It's more important that you are the best than what you are the best of. I would rather be, from a marketing perspective, not absolutely, I'd rather have the 10th biggest company in the world, right, than the first biggest company in Indiana. But from an advertising perspective, it is more compelling to be the best.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Let me see, make sure I'm covering. I do want to hit on one more section where he
Okay.
talks about mastery. Now, this is actually the book that I've been eager to read. It's just, I think it's like 500 pages long. I mean, I'm halfway joking. It's a long book by Robert Greene, Mastery.
Right. Oh,
But
that's where the line is.
huh? You said
That's
what?
where the line is. 500.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if that's book club eligible right now. Like, but but no, I definitely do want to read that book. But I feel like mastery that's what I'm striving to get towards.
Mm,
And right now I'm trying to steal other people's thousands of hours to kind of accelerate my process.
yeah.
We're kind of doing that in this space, right? We're learning, we're growing. And every time like we're working towards a level of mastery.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, what level of mastery are you working towards in what aspects?
Ooh.
I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't even tell you about this one.
I know, that's okay. I would expect nothing less. This is good. It pushes us. I have a few things, but I am looking to master definitely in the coming year some version of marketing, digital marketing, things like that. I see how necessary it is, not only for myself and businesses, but I see a lot of others struggling with it. And it's kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's a reminder. I don't think that you need to reinvent the wheel, but I do think I can educate myself and hit a point that, I've mastered it in the sense that I not only want to get better and fine tune my skills, but I want to be able to help and teach others because I just see so many struggling with that portion of the business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something you're definitely going to strive in
Thank
this
you.
time.
Yeah.
All right, I want to move over.
I was ready with my goals.
You was ready. You was ready. All right, let's watch one more clip.
Okay. Round it out.
Beginner will try to advertise or will try to sell, and they will have binary outcomes. They'll just say, I didn't sell or I did sell, or I got leads or I didn't get leads. But there are so many nuanced steps between that. And when you have the milestones, the progress markers, it allows you to fix things so you can keep moving the buck along until you get the outcome. And so I'll tell you a story about this. So when I was starting Outbound way back in the day, it was a new channel for us and I'd never done it. And about 90 days or 4 months in, my executive team kind of did like an intervention. So they came together. It was like I was getting like a drug rehab, right? They were like, we think this is a problem. We think this is a shiny object. We think you're distracted and we should double down on what works. I was like, how dare you use my words against me, right? And the thing is that strategically, I knew we needed to have a second acquisition channel for us to sell the business. And so I was like, no, it's because they could only see that we'd only done one sale in 4 months and 100% of my time was going towards this. But what they didn't see was all the progress that we were making. And so I had higher degrees of mastery in this. Now, to be fair, it was just because I had learned it along the way. But when it started, it was like, okay, well, we have to get a list. So where do we get the list? So we looked at, we bought a bunch of different lists. A lot of lists didn't work. One of them did. We're like, okay, this is a good provider. And then we start, like, oh, we got to enrich the data. So we start learning how to enrich the data. Then we started calling them, but then no one was picking up. And then we had to learn how call wrapping works. So we get local numbers. And then all of a sudden people start picking up, but then start hanging up on us. So then we had to fix the hook in the script. And then we fixed the hook in the script. People would make it a minute, but then they'd hang up on us. So then we fixed the hook, and then we fixed the offer. And then people would then go to the second call, but then they weren't showing up for the second call. And so it's like, we have to just keep moving the buck along the way. But if you looked at it 2 months in, it's like, a heart surgery looks like murder to somebody from the outside who doesn't understand the milestones. And so as you master something, if you don't know why something's not working, look closer. Look for the smaller attributes that you can actually zoom in on and say, okay, well, we'll get a sale eventually if we just keep moving in this direction. And so look for directional correctness rather than binary. And so
love that. So many gems from that one. And I think the biggest takeaway is like the level of detail, right? I think that's the difference between good to great is like the level of detail in how much you're willing to kind of get into the nitty gritty for the level of detail to aspire to where you want to go, right? So for example, we'll use this podcast as an example. Okay, we need to develop the intro. All right, once we get the intro, okay, how long is it? Okay, cool. Do we need to tweak that? Okay, now we need to develop the outro, right? Thanks. So that's something that we are collectively going to be doing for this podcast. That's going to be something that we're going to be doing individually as we work on some of our communication styles and whatnot. But I just love how he talks about the attention to detail and the small levels that we have to get to in order to achieve mastery.
Well, I think it shows his experience too, because like when he was talking about that, I mean, we all kind of laugh, right? When he's like, "Hey, don't use my words against me." Like, what do you mean? But I also think I thought his experience showed in that when he said, "Hold on, I hear you, but this is not, and why?" Because I think a lot of us, like, we can almost always probably answer our own questions. When we said earlier, like, I feel like exercise is just an easy one, where it's like, you need the reminder. You don't necessarily need to be told to eat better and go to the gym, but we all usually need some sort of push, accountability, or whatever, to where it's like, okay, I just ate 20 candy bars today. Why? Like, most likely there's probably not a probable like intention behind that, unless you're really trying to bulk and that's the only thing available and you're stranded on an island or something. Maybe there is, but like, I feel like with that, so many of us are going to get shiny object syndrome. And I think that's a very real thing. And I think to each their own, right? If you feel like there's intention behind it and you're doing it with a purpose, you don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. You're just learning, whatever it is, go for it. But I think his team brought it to him. And I thought that was so important that he was like, well, I'm doing this, but also here's the progress that you are not seeing, and I think that was probably helpful for them too. Of now they have been educated on a different set of metrics to measure by, because I think so many of us do that. Like we used the example earlier, I'm like, oh, you're gonna make 100 calls. Well, I only made 80 today and no one bought my product or whatever. Is that a failure? I mean, maybe. I feel like this kind of brings everything together of like, well, what is the success? Like, what are you trying to do? And I think that was cool how he broke it down of like, okay, but as long as we're kind of kicking the rock down the road, it's like, let's keep it moving. Let's move the needle. And like, as long as we do this and we're adjusting as we go, this will work out. At a certain point, yeah, maybe it doesn't, you pivot, but I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, no, again, this is one of the guys, Alex Hormozi, who we can listen to all day. So many different gems in this podcast. I had so many notes that I kind of like shrunk down to what we utilize today. So to kind of bring it full circle, we talked about shrinking your competition, nobody knows you, be clear, not clever, stealing from yourself. So like just so many different tips that we leveraged and we're able to share with you from Alex's pod today. So
absolutely.
So again, what do you got coming up? What's on the agenda? Anything major?
Nothing major at the moment. I think just like many, kind of using this time to I think reset is probably a good word.
Yep.
Sure, I feel like, your goals are probably made. You have an idea of maybe what you want to do this year and just kind of going, okay, what am I doing that's fitting that? And if it's not, how can I tweak things on my daily to make this outcome possible? So I think that's where I'm at. I think it's going to be a good year.
No, I agree. I feel like last year started off a little bit slower, but I mean, we're 8 days into this year, and I feel like it's just go.
Right.
But this is everything that I've been wanting, everything I've been asking for, so I feel blessed.
Absolutely.
Well, for those that are able to listen, all 0 people that are live with us right now, we thank you for taking the time to learn with us, to grow with us, and hopefully, potentially, futurely, in the future, earn with us. So,
Yes.
Avita, talk to you soon, and we are out.
Absolutely.
Later.
Yeah.